Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Roach Wiggle, August 17th, 2023. There's already a lot of people talking. I guess that's what happens when I make this thing ahead of time. For the first time in a long time, I have a list of topics I kind of want to talk about. What that's about. I have a list of topics I want to talk about today. Inspired by I have been, I don't actively participate in the Roach Crossing Discord as I maybe should. I just don't have the time for it. But I do sort of look around, see what people are talking about. And I have a couple of things inspired by some stuff that I saw there. So I thought I would go ahead and bring that up. So I'm just going to go ahead and say hello to everybody, see who's here. Anybody got any live stream topics? We have Panthera Nico. I think you're new, so if you are, welcome. Duchess Venom, talking Panthera, talking about some beetles that they would like to acquire. Tennyson, Zen Monkey, Alan, LC, Jojo Bugs, hello. Eric Matthews, did it start? Yes, it has started. See, I said hi to Tennyson. Braden, this isn't outside. No, next week's live stream is outside. I planned it 2 weeks in the future because I looked at. I just kind of, what did I do? I looked at the yard and I thought, I want to do an actual live stream this week, but I wanted to not do the garden one, so be more focused on bug topics because there's a lot. There's a fair amount of stuff to discuss. So, but I am upset that a couple of things may have come and gone out of bloom in the time period. So we'll just see what happens next week. We'll just have some fun with it. Kyle with an agenda. Hello, Satchel. Will there be inverts on screen today? Yeah, I'll find something to get on screen. Something with fewer bones than I have. Let's see what else. The picture tricked you. Oh, it should just be the regular icon for today. But anyways, I the birding by year and beyond. I frequently hear and see all four of these birds. Thank you very much. Exotic Wilderness. Hello, welcome. What else? I guess I should touch on last week and kind of what happened. So basically, without sugarcoating anything, Angela's dad passed away just completely out of the blue. He had heart surgery about, I think it was last November or maybe December, and he was doing fine. There wasn't any sort of, he was going to get a checkup. I think would have been this week or something. So it was just completely unexpectedly. She was very close with her father. I had met him and then we'd done some things together a couple of times, and he was a nice guy and he apparently really liked me. So, it was just out of nowhere, and it just kind of, rocked both of our worlds. And so that's why, last week I had to reschedule everything as Angela really needed me. So, rest in peace, Jim. I actually, the day that he passed, Angela and her brother wanted to go there and go to his place, which he had a old farm out in their childhood house. So they grew up out in the country, and we were all over the place. When I got there, the coroner had just left, and everybody's like, oh well, we got to do this. Oh well, we got to do that. Well, actually, no, I think I want to. It's everybody. You just don't know what to do. Your brain's completely racked with what was going on. So yeah, we went out and took a hike onto the property where they grew up, and having a good time, and kind of just sort of as everybody was just sort of coming to terms with the situation. But interestingly, while we were out there, I found a couple of things. I found a goldenrod that's listed as extirpated in Michigan and got a sample. So that was something is in honor of Jim. I also found a Parkablatta virginica, which I did keep. It's an adult female. I don't know. It's not necessarily in the best shape, so I don't know if it'll actually culture or not, but I took it so I'd have a colony to remember that by. And then I also found a tree hole on the way out of the woods, and there were, of course, skirtids and moth flies in there. And I did collect some of the water from that, and it seems that I can restart my Lepisiodina conspicua culture with the larvae that I found in that water. They appear to be Lepisiodina conspicua. So yeah, it was a lot of little presents that Jim left for us that day, and so Angela and her brother are the only ones who will be doing all the planning, the state management, the planning for the services, the oh, I know why those are blowing. The ceiling fan on. Don't usually do that. So anyways, it's a lot of stuff on her plate. She was going to move back in with her father this September. They had talked about it, and she was getting prepared to do that. And that was also on the table. So it's just been this huge, just whiplash for her especially, and I've been here for her. So that's what happened last week. And for me, anytime the schedule gets shifted around, the domino falls and 10 other things get kind of knocked out of place. So anyways, that's what happened last week. So rest in peace, Jim. I didn't know you all that well, but we did have a couple of good times together, and Angela will dearly miss you. So all right, with that being said, yeah, there's been a lot of bug stuff. I have caught up on a lot of husbandry and have caught up on a lot of putting things away, caught up on a lot of shipping, although now I have to, everything's going to go out next week as I had posted. So that's going to be fun. But that's kind of the end of the Kyle playing catch up with a lot of stuff. I'm going to be on top of things pretty soon here. Yeah, so any questions anybody has about any projects, anything that's going on over here? Tennyson is started a blog for some isopod things. That was actually, Tennyson, that was one of the things that I was going to bring up today was I guess the stream isn't for kids, but the note that I put down on the little thing of topics to discuss, the first one was Closey. Maybe don't Google that. Maybe ask somebody of age who's in tune with the internet nowadays to explain to you what that is. But I was using it to remind me that I wanted to discuss the Armadillidium versicolor ex klugii situation and my thoughts on that. So Oren McMonagle, obviously everybody knows Oren, has claimed that he has hybrid Klugii ex versicolor, and people have asked for pictures, and he's been kind of hesitant or something. He just hasn't sent pictures, but that's kind of just how Oren is. There's nothing good or bad about it. In his Isopod soft cover book, there is a picture of the hybrids in there. So what I wanted to bring up here is my thoughts on the matter. I haven't actually seen them in person. I did see the pictures though, and then a couple of other things to bring up here. So if Nate did a dissection and that the genitalia weren't morphologically different from Klugii, I'm curious, what exactly else would explain this weird phenotype in Klugii. I currently have all three of the, unless there's more, somebody correct me on that if there's more by now, the Klugii localities, pure stock of each. And there is, they're very distinct from each other, but the Montenegros, which I think were the ones that were the hybrids that form the theoretical hybrids with the versicolor. After having them for, I had them since I lived with my parents, so it's been 2016. I've had the colony for. I have not seen, there have been some more colorful individuals pop up. There have been some less colorful individuals pop up. And I've never quite seen the colors that were depicted in Oren's pictures. So there's been similar in some lines, like some high L's, not completely sure, but this hybrids kind of look like they could be. The stupid heart emoji thing is hiding what you're saying. Be a mixed locality line, but not 100% sure. Well, what I was going to say with this, and I'll touch on some things some other people have said, is that, I don't doubt that Oren kept them together and that they may have produced something weird. I think Oren would have pulled weird individuals that popped up in just like Klugii. I don't think that there's any foul play here. In the worst case scenario, I think just there's something weird going on, but Oren is saying that it's hybridization, and that he's incorrect about that. But I don't think Oren has any ill intent. Oren doesn't really care about people's opinions of things, and for all of us, some people that's a pro and some people that's a con. It's just kind of how Oren is, and I will be honest, getting responses from Oren online just kind of makes me think that he's a very gruff, almost mean person. But then having met Oren in person, he's very sarcastic, he's very witty, and he's very clever. And it's something you really have to experience in person to really understand. Almost a bit snarky in a very subdued way. It's very dry humor. So some of that stuff doesn't translate so well to online stuff. So anyways, I like Oren, and I don't think there's anything nefarious going on. But what I was going to say with this whole isopod situation is, and getting a hint from the dogs right now, I feel like there's a bit of the tail wagging the dog going on with some of this isopod stuff, in that things were brought in and said, this is this species, this is that species, these are valid species, when we already know that isopod taxonomy is in complete shambles. There are several undescribed species in the United States. There are species introduced in the United States that are not described in their original indigenous range. And so I guess the assumption here was that, these are two valid species, therefore they will not hybridize, versus thinking maybe they're genetically close enough that they could be considered the same species, and therefore they may not be formed. It's just, we put the boxes around the isopods, and what the assumption that these boxes were infallible is what could be at play here. That versicolor and Klugii could be, should be two distinct species. And I have versicolor from Ukraine. I kind of missed the window of opportunity where I felt comfortable getting the other localities from vendors, because at this point it's a crapshoot unless you get something from Europe and literally like brown boxed in with a lot of things. So unless somebody else has a lot of the other versicolor localities, I probably won't get them unless they can say, oh yeah, I got them from this guy 3 years ago, and he just, they got like a 6 count in an auction, and right after they popped up, I won't be inclined to get them. So what I'm saying here is, you see with some things like the Klugii, was it Verneri situation, Armadillidium verneri and Armadillidium Klugii, where they're two separate species, but they're very similar, and it's possible that the orange Klugii are actually hybrids with verneri, which is where they would have gotten that recessive allele from more easily than it naturally occurring in a colony of them. So I'm going to read through Tennyson's comments here. I'm also going to bring up some things on what Alan's excited about getting some new pots for repotting some plants. Exotic Wilderness asked about refining the Gynolurida to get rid of the brown markings. Yeah, you should be able to. I mean, that's what I did the first time around. Speaking of that, I've actually had males emerge from satchel stock just recently. So yesterday I panicked and went through the group and pulled all of the females that I could sex, put them into another container so that I can mate the best of the males with the best of the females. Sorry to hear Panthera as thunderstorms rolling through. We've actually got some pretty good lighting here. It's very beautiful outside. It's just sort of lightly raining. I love the sound of the rain on the vegetation and the crickets and stuff. Let's see. Tennyson bringing up some more things. Isopods are also really weird that if two species can hybridize, they're almost always going to end up reclassified as a distinct species or subspecies. Yeah, again, I feel like there's a lot of an assumption of us being infallible. With the same thing might be going on with hissers, with the taxonomy, considering, things like Ailuropoda, the pancake or flathorn hisser can hybridize with Princessia / Gromphidorina and create very convincing Princessia / Gromphidorina looking first generation hybrids. There's a lot of things that we've kind of assumed because hybridizing is a great way to prove that two things aren't the same species in a lot of ways, or crossing two individuals. If they're all other things considered, if you put a male of something with a female of something else and they don't reproduce, and you mix the sexes up, you try it in groups, you try it this way, and there's no reproduction going on, it's a pretty good sign that they're reproductively isolated, which is a very good gold standard argument for species, for elevating both the species. So, but with these isopods things, it's there's a lot of assumptions that were made that, this is a different species from that. I mean, even in like a species like Percellio scaber, there's, as Nate has pointed out, there's a couple of published subspecies or varieties, and now the sun decides to come out. I'm gonna go ahead and close this a little. And whether or not those are valid is something that's going to have to be talked about, or is there actually any merit to them, or are they just kind of an arbitrary description of two different populations, or different characteristics between different populations? So yeah, I guess another thing I would say is versicolor, at least the Ukrainian ones that I have, are like, they max out at like a third the size of Klugii. So if you were to get some of this stock from Oren and see, raise a couple of these hybrid individuals, I would say look for what sort of size range diversity there is. I know it's not the best indicator, but it would be a good way of seeing that, if there's a huge gradient of absolute maximum size, it's another good argument, because all the Klugii varieties, get to the same size as Vulgari or larger. So, so I'm Tennyson. I'm very picky with where things come from, due to some experiences in the past. So I prefer to get from smaller individuals than larger breeders, unless it's things that are fresh in. So it is my preference based on experience. I will just only say that. I'm curious, Panthera. I would like to see if you have any pictures of your hybrids between Elliptorhina and Gromphidorhina. I would be very interested in seeing those. So exotic wilderness. So basically, if you have different founding stock, even if it's the same trait in different founding stock, I still list it as a different line, because you don't know what other genetics are lurking in that stock. And, some of that is, well, how long have they been isolated geographically or whatever? So, for example, if I find a Dalmatian isopod in a population in Michigan, and I find the same species and I find the same mutation in stock from the UK or Western Europe or something, I am inclined to mark both of those strains as different things and give them different names, because even though they're the same species, there's a bunch of other alleles that could be different between them and could affect the expression of the singular allele that you're looking at. And I have irrefutable evidence for this, using the leucistic allele in Porcellio scaber, where in North American populations, because they are primarily expressing the sort of regular wild type gray scaber, the leucistic allele will give them white bodies with black eyes. Now, if you take lava, like a Western mainland Europe strain of scaber, and you cross that allele into it by crossing the North American stock to the European stock, you will end up with individuals that are expressing that same allele, but instead of having black eyes, they will have white eyes, because there is in those strains, there are some individuals that have, they were calling it lava or whatever, but it's not a singular gene. There's this multi-gene thing. There's a whole mess of different alleles in lava stock. But basically that trait where they can have, it's not really calicoing, but they'll have a lot of the body will be orange with like a modeling of the sort of regular gray throughout it. And because of that, because they express the dorsal or the head end, the anterior end is orange and the posterior is more gray, when you cross that leucistic allele into it, instead of expressing black eyes, they express white eyes. So it's the same allele, it's just expressing differently because of all the other different traits that are unique or different between these two strains. So that's why. So that's the point that I'm making there. But however, here's what's happening with the yellow Lyrida is Satchel got them from Oren. I got mine from Oren. I isolated that characteristic out of Oren's line. So there's a great number of shared alleles there. So when I finish refining this new yellow that I have, I'm just going to call it yellow. It's the same founding stock as what produced stuff before. So we'll give it the name. So technically, when you isolate yours, I would say just call it yellow, because it's the same stock as Satchel's and mine, etc. Now, if you really, I was going to say, if you really work on it and you get it really, really noticeably different or something like that, then it's your decision to decide whether or not you want to start calling it a different strain. And basically what will happen there is there will be social reinforcement, because if you send a strain like Tennyson's saying, called super duper extra yellow out to a bunch of people, and then they get them and they look at them and they're like, these look exactly the same as the other stuff, and then they start talking to people, and people find out, oh, hey, this came from the same line, or blah blah. Then there's going to be people, oh, they're the same thing. Why even bother? So there's some arbitrariness to it, but that's what I would say is they're still yellow. If you put a lot of work into it and you get something that's very tangible and you feel very comfortable calling it a different line, add super yellow or extra yellow or whatever, then I would say that you could add another name to it. Not that I'm going to stop you from naming it anything else, but that's my sentiments on calling it yellow. So, Carlos's photo is making somewhat clear there. Klugi I too. I can send you that. Has anyone tried crossing lavas with koi/orange koi? I know they can cross the Dalmatians, so wouldn't be too shocked. So here's the thing with koi that I have found out, and with a lot of these piebalding in a lot of isopods, is it's heritable, but it's not genetic. There's something else going on there, and I haven't quite figured it out. But my proposition is that it is a pathogen, and when you are breeding for higher expression piebalds, you're breeding for higher resistance to this pathogen or to this mutagenic agent. My evidence for this is that one, it's the expression is not consistent across the life of the organism. When Porcellio-scaber piebalds are born, they're regular wild types, and only once they get to about a centimeter do they start to show any of the piebalding. So that's that. In addition to that, I have crossed piebald to other lines of scaber to like lava lines and things derived from orange calicos. And if it were a simple recessive heritable mechanism, which, you could say, oh, it just over the organism's lifespan, it doesn't express until they get older. It's just, it's a genetic thing. It's like some people, their actual hair color doesn't express until they get older or whatever. You could argue that. However, it portrays simple recessively in, but not perfectly. That's another thing. In Scaber piebald. But when you cross it into other lines, it does not express with the ratio that you would expect if you were doing simple Mendelian squares for a simple recessive allele. So even if you breed sibling to sibling, you will get a lower percentage of offspring than, what would that be? 25%. You will get a lower percentage of offspring than 25% expressing the characteristic, which means that it's not a simple Mendelian inheritance that's going on there. I mean, that's one argument you could, or one conclusion you could derive from that. But what I think is going on is some of those other strains, either the other genetics in those lines are preventing it from expressing, or if it's a pathogen, there's some degree of resistance to it that's in those, and so it doesn't affect the phenotype that pops up. So the nightmare with koi and orange koi, for one, with koi, all the koi that I see at expos now are just regular wild types. Like the big vendors are just selling it because the strain had a name and they have no idea why it's actually called that. Then they probably got compromised stock, which doesn't really matter for koi anyways, because it was Alan Gross made those mixing a bunch of different lines, which is where orange koi came from. It was he had very messy breeding techniques, in my opinion. You know, not to say I'm a saint myself. I do love throwing a bunch of things in a bin and seeing what comes out. But, you know, I like to cross individual to individual or start with like a founding female. And thoughts on inbreeding aside, it's very effective for narrowing down, especially simple recessive traits. So anyways, the problem with orange koi, there's a lot of vendors that still have orange koi, not so many that have actual koi. And the problem with orange koi is that it seems that there may be Dalmatian genetics in there too. So you get some individuals that are very high white expressive, and those individuals seem to be the ones that are actually expressing the Dalmatian gene in addition to whatever is causing the koi. So you get some koi stock that's absolutely terrible, where you have a high percentage of just like wild type, or not wild type, of just regular oranges. And then you get, for those of us who have done more refining work, you get higher white expression koi, which again I think might be due to Dalmatian. I haven't tested this yet, but considering how Alan Gross made those lines, it would not surprise me if that allele was lurking underneath all of this as well. Let's see. Eric Matthews says, I remember when polar grizzlies were surprised that several of the colubrid species could breed. Well, now look at dogs real quick. Look at dogs, how we're finding out that, you know, dogs and wolves, you know, we thought that there was a linear path to domestication. And now it's like, well, there was one domestication event and then there was another one. And then they crossed these populations and then there was another one, but then that one went extinct. And then there was interbreeding with wolves here. And then another, you know, it's a whole, I guess with like the dog wolf situation, you know, you can basically tell what things are wolves. But with dogs, you know, there's been all kinds of, there's like clades of alleles that kind of maybe even I think there are a couple of studied haplogroups in dogs that help you determine kind of what domestication events or origins certain groups had. I think it was Aristotle or maybe it was Linnaeus himself who said that dogs were the taxon with the high-held tail or something like that, which, you know, kind of tracks interestingly. Wolves are not very expressive with their tails. I think seeing a pure wolf with its tail much above the midline of its body is very rare, versus almost all dog breeds will carry their tails high at some point, whether it's curled up or in a sickle shape or otter shape or whatever. So, you know, it's kind of those weird things where it's like we've gone and done all this genetic work to say, oh, yes, this is a dog. Oh, yes, this is a wolf. And yet there was kind of a simpler explanation for it hundreds of thousands of years ago that was just as good, if not better, in a lot of ways because it's very practical. So, Tennyson, if you're looking, Tennyson, Dalmatians and selecting for high pattern. I have tried for 10 years to select for higher pattern expression in Dalmatians. I have done sibling to sibling. I've done parent to sibling. I've done parent to sibling of parent, parent to sibling of parent with sibling, and have not been able to get any higher expression. it is not in U.S. derived, and I'm starting to learn that in even in outcross stock to lava, you cannot upbreed for Dalmatian expression, at least in U.S. derived stock of Porcellio scaber. It doesn't work like that. I have found that, at least again, maybe there's another allele out there that will make it easier, or that will contribute something major to this. But I have found if you keep colonies cooler and drier, you will get an upregulation in the amount of black pigment that they have. I guess cooler and moisture too. The one picture I think I have on the website of a Dalmatian was one that I collected that when it was like April, so it was like 50s, 60s outside. It was very moist, and that one has very good expression. So that is my opinion after trying to do that for 10 years using strictly line breeding. Again, not ruling out that it could happen if you somehow found another allele to cross into a line, but from my experience, it's not possible. I don't think I have Discord pulled up, so I might, unless you sent it on my phone. So Tennyson, if you want a good koi line with that phenotype, you're going to definitely get piebald. Piebald, I've been working with piebald since Val sent me them in 2000. Is either late 2016 or early 2017, and I've gotten them to point where consistently the middle of the body is entirely white. That's how high the expression is on the piebald line. Yeah, it is a little bit. Could these be hybrids? What was the species that the Albanian isopods were labeled as? Is it possible these are hybrids with that species? Again, people mixing up Klugii is like it was maybe fronted triangulum. Yeah, because they look a lot like the Albania, or maybe even just mislabeled stock of fronted triangulum. It's very. Also, if anybody has any fronted triangulum, I have a wish list of isopods that I need to reacquire here. I have I have an untracked line of fronted triangulum that came from Smugbug in 2021. I would like the Albania as well. What else was I going to say? Fronted triangle. Yeah, I would like the Albania if anybody has a colony of those and you're pretty sure that they're pure, and you could kind of give me some information on where the line came from. Exotic Wilderness. There's a photo of my Lyrida yellow on the website. I don't have any pictures of any colonies handy, but maybe somebody with a good colony that might have some on hand. Let's see. Yeah, so I'm wondering if, because fronted triangulum is very similar to Klugii and also to Werneri, so it's possible that they're all just one variable species across that range. Frontetria, not fronted triangle. Oh, maybe you were in the middle spelling that. Would anybody's piebald have risk of contamination? Does not matter too much who I buy them from. I mean, Tennyson, you could get them from me if you wanted to. Again, I don't really trust anybody with scaber mutations nowadays. The few that I picked up recently were like Red Edge because I had no other choice, because the first time that they were imported, I tried to get them from isopod.com. I couldn't. They were just out of them constantly. So I had to get some from Carlos, and I think Carlos got them directly from overseas. And, they seem pure. They had the orange allele, which isn't unheard of in wild populations of isopods. Like in the Midwest, Armadillidium nasatum, all the populations have that orange allele in them for some reason. Rust scaber, I've seen a couple pictures of those. I have a couple of lines that are proving out like that. I need to be very confident with releasing them, because I don't want a lemonade situation or whatever going on where you get it and you're like, oh, this looks like the same thing as a billion other things. So, yeah, keep in touch with me on that. I do have piebalds available if you like to pick them up. Again, they're straight from Valerie, and I did the isolating Well, she caught them on her horse hay shed or something, sent them to me, and then I isolated the trait, and now I've just been refining it over the years. So, where I live, Euthiola rugiceps and Dicenitis moritor is a natural occurring hybrid. Let me see what that is. Dicenitis moritor. Oh, rice beetles. Yeah. So yeah, I think maybe more of a question of figuring out the true taxonomic relationships between some of these entities that were assumed to be different species is worth considering. So, so yeah, that's my opinion on the Twisted Clowns scenario. Is that, you know, maybe Oren just got compromised stock of Klugii from somebody. Again, basically around late 2018, early 2019 was kind of when isopods were kicking up steam, and there were a lot of just people in it to just get stuff, make money, flip, get out, whatever they could do. So, so that's my opinion on the situation. Again, everybody has, a lot of people have very strong opinions of Warren's good or bad. Warren kind of got me into bugs on the Roach forum, and again, I've met with him 2 times, and we've done plenty of swaps and stuff over the years. So I like him. It's kind of a, I'll actually say this. Now that I met him in person, I know that he's just not mean, that he's just kind of more snarky and dry humored. It makes me appreciate him a little bit more that way, because there's not really many people who have that sort of personality cluster. So it's very interesting. Panthera says, I heard as long as an animal is in the same subfamily, they can breed. Not always. Most of the time, I would say not. But, you know, somebody, I think it was either last spring or maybe it was this spring, where Satchel introduced a couple of us to the fact that recently they hybridized American paddlefish and some sort of sturgeon, and they have pictures to prove it. So I don't know if the offspring are sterile or not. Maybe they noted that in the paper. I just remember that it's like there's like, was it over 100 million years of isolation between these two entities, and yet there's still compatibility between them, that you can at least produce offspring that don't immediately die and that might actually be able to reproduce. It's just nuts. So don't worry, guys. One day I'll get actual lighting equipment for in here. Maybe I'll do it before or after the auction this year. I'll get the glow up camera or something. I will say I will go all out when I move and I have an actual designated office space. Although I will say, as much as I complain about there being lots of bugs in here, it does add to the aesthetic of the live stream. It's gotten cozier with this, actually. It's going to be super cozy for the auction. But I will get some more formal YouTuber things, and I am going to work my hardest and find out some way I can hook up a microscope camera overlay thing so that I can show tiny bugs and all kinds of fun stuff on the live stream here. I will work on making a rig for that at some point. We just have to get to the next step, which is going to be moving. So, hoping to get to the February Taylor Expo again. I will see you in, oh man, that's only 6 months, Exotic Wilderness. And stick around for longer. I think last time you came and you got some footage and stuff like that. Maybe I was busy. But yeah, just pester me more, ask me more questions about stuff. I'm happy to talk. All right. First thing off of the discussion list, done. The next thing on the list, Alan and I have been going back and forth on this. That's okay, Exotic Wilderness. I understand that. Alan and I have been going back and forth on the Marulinella situation, Marulinella cubaris, undescribed genus, whatever they are. And, you know, I'm very critical because I'm critical of people having good success with them in captivity, like tricolors and stuff, because I would think now that we're 3-4 years into people working with them in the States, that people would have consistent success and not just, you know, sort of getting them going a little bit or piddling along, and more like, oh, hey, I have hundreds. So I wanted to get the group opinion or any information from people about if anybody's made any progress on that. Alan sent me some videos and pictures of some people with what seem to be okay colonies of them, and the setups check out. They've got like an automatic misting system and some airflow. And in the colony, I don't see anything that screams like smoking gun for something that's necessary for keeping them, but there were a lot of well-eaten, well-rotted leaves in the enclosure. So that might be part of it. I had some thoughts that they could be predatory because I got babies out of tricolor, keeping them in with Cubaris species Jupiter, and the Jupiters just kind of piddled along, and I never really got a lot of babies. But the tricolors kind of piddled along and never really had any, or had some babies, but not really good success. So I kind of thought, hey, maybe if they're predatory in the wild, that might explain this, why there's sort of an equilibrium that both have reached here. But it sounds like a lot of people stateside are still having huge trouble with them. And I had talked to Nate, and he kind of confirmed my suspicion that a lot of them are still just being imported. There's not a lot of or any captive breeding going on in the United States on a meaningful scale. So I was just curious about revisiting that because I did get an F1 out of my tricolors, but I'm down to like one adult now, and there's just a lot of Kim Wisman has said that maybe 15 even. Kim Wisman has said that bugs are bugs. They reproduce like bugs. There's few bugs that are anywhere close to human lifespan, and so they got to reproduce pretty quickly. And compared to a lot of other organisms, a lot of larger organisms, there are selected. So we should be seeing better results out of something like this. Even with the larger Spanish Porcelio and stuff like that, people kind of complained about them. But when you have their husbandry correct, they reproduce very well. So Tennyson, I guess people are saying there's about 12 or 15 established. It seems like some of the larger outlets don't have them available or lose their colonies pretty frequently. So I guess I could. Has anybody brought anything up to you on what one of the keys might be? Macropanesia would like to disagree with that assertion. However, they can have litters of 20 to 30, and I've had that many. And it's the problem is just holding enough back for yourself and not, being tempted to sell them very frequently. I have enough rhinos available between myself and a friend locally who breeds them, that I'm able to make them available several times a year. So it's not really a problem. And Macropanesia rhinoceros is not a small isopod that can grow to its max size in less than 6 months. So there's a disconnect here. And I'm just curious if anybody's had any luck or any advice or any thoughts on the situation. While I allow that to and another argument though is look at Phyllosia muscorum, a very common species in the Midwest, and people have a difficult time getting them to breed. I had a really good breeding group in a 32-ounce deli cup where I went from like 5 adults to like a couple hundred. And I think I really want to say what happened, what was working there was it was like coconut fiber and just not even rotted oak leaves, just kind of freshly fallen oak leaves on top of that. And I think I sprayed with some good frequency, but I remember them completely skeletonizing the leaves that I gave them. So it's possible that they just they like this sort of freshly dead plant material and probably high ventilation. It's not something that people regularly give them. So high ventilation and high air humidity. So it sounds like their care is very similar to Pseudoglomerus magnifica. So that we'll see if I can if I can bottle some of that lightning over the winter. I've done some rearranging here. I've done some rearranging. I've done a lot of husbandry. I did husbandry yesterday on everything in this room. I've done a lot of rearranging. I've done a lot of enclosure redos, topping lofts, etc. Where was I going with this? Oh, I now, I've had this weird little shelf here that only fits like one thing of containers. And what I'm going to use that for this year is all the roaches that I want to be very religious about keeping high humidity, or just all the things that I keep in here that I want to keep at high humidity, will be going on this line so that when I wake up in the morning, I can spray, and before I go to bed, I can spray, and then everything else will just be on a regular watering schedule in here. So if I do manage to acquire some more tricolors or bicolors or whatever quadricolors, quadrupeds are available, I'll probably give them a go up here and try that approach with them and see how things go. But using foggers and misting systems and a bunch of high intensive setups is not very conducive to people who just want to keep some isopods. Even the Persellio species, the larger Persellio, you can really reduce down to an art and a science. But taking care of an isopod the same way you may a cat or dog, or even more so, is not the most fun thing to do. And that's coming from me, where my day in, day out is taking care of billions of different things. So Sats will get out here with the line. Oh, here's my problem with Marulinella. I guess I'm not giving them enough protein. I need to go and buy some special products for them. I need to buy some specially formulated diet that has 1 billion ingredients. I should be giving them limestone. Should probably also have a cuttle bone in with them. And they probably can't go outside of a very narrow range of temperature, probably between like 63 degrees Fahrenheit for half the year, because they're probably seasonal breeders, and 72.5 degrees Fahrenheit for the rest of the year. And that's probably why I'm failing with them. That's the professional opinion here. So Panthera has a 3-year-old death's head roach. Yeah, with good care, that is. There's somebody on the Roach forum who had a hybrid Blabrus that lived for 4.5 years, I think, as an adult. Could we see an adult Roth's burrowing roach? I'm thinking about getting some. I'll try and remember for the next stream, but that would need me to go all the way downstairs and go all the way to the back rack and get the colony down and pick one out. I'll do it next stream because I'll have it queued up for before the stream. What I was going to show now are probably some of those Aphaloria. Half tempted to show some pseudoscorpions. And there was something else I was going to strive to get up to go and see what I was thinking about over there. Coelacanth says, joining late tonight. I've been praying for you and your family, Kyle. I will keep doing so. Good to see you. Thank you so much, Coelacanth. I'm forwarding everybody's regards to Angela, as I have been during this very difficult time for her. So thank you. I appreciate that. Tennyson says it's been done in simple ones where all you do is well-rotted wood, high humidity, high ventilation without any fog or anything needed. I guess maybe then people are just getting dying smuggled in wild caughts, and that might explain a lot of the losses. But it's just interesting that when you Google this or you look it up on YouTube, there are very few hits for things, or even in some regards, what's pulled up on Facebook, there's very few hits for things doing well. So, I'll give them another go. Alan has a group of one of the Ember bees or this or that. And I figured that if Alan couldn't get them going, because Alan is extremely good at raising isopods, you have to just be in those private groups. Anyways, if Alan doesn't get results out of it, there's got to be something else going on, because Alan has exceptional isopod husbandry, definitely far above and beyond what I typically give to my isopods. So we'll see. The real question is, though, has anybody gotten more Alaniscus paraconvexus breeding? That'll be the true litmus test here in terms of things. Very intensive setup for Alaniscus. So let's see. Brought that point up. So I guess I will patiently wait and see. Wait for another person to throw money at to get another group of isopods to kill, and that'll be that. Let's see. So for some things, if anybody here is listening, if you have some, well, two of these, it doesn't matter. I need the Armadillidium CF Espanolii and Porcellio spatulatus. I need restarts. My Espanolii surprisingly dried out because the first time I kept them too moist and they got porcelain disease. And I was like, okay, I'll keep them drier during the summer. So I kept them too dry and they dried out all the way. Are they really Espanolii just straight up, Tennyson? I can remove that there. This is why in the fall, I talked to Nate about this, but now Tennyson, I'm probably going to have to make a Discord for you and Nate. When Roach Crossing undergoes its overhaul, I will be updating and coordinating all of these isopod names and whatnot with the current literature. So Nate's already agreed to help me, which I appreciate. And Tennyson, I assume that you'd be in as well. So yes, I need Armadillidium Espanolii. If anybody has those, I don't need a lot. I can swap for something that's stupidly overpriced, like cappuccinos, or in a couple of weeks, some white duckies, ambers, blah, blah, blah. I need Porcellio spatulatus as well. Those ones that just got porcelain disease during the winter time. I got to figure out what's causing the outbreaks of this occasionally in some of the enclosures. Because sometimes colonies will recover from it quite swiftly, and other times it will be catastrophic. So, and finally, I need Armadillidium vulgare Punta Cana. I have several strains derived from pure Punta Canas, but I have lost the original strain that I got in 2018. So I need those if anybody has them. I would like to get pure stock. I know, again, through several large breeders, do not keep track of what falls into other bins, what handfuls of leaves from outside get put into what bins. And so I'm going to be very, very picky with getting more of the stock where I can. I actually thought I'd lost St. Lucia as well, but then I realized I had split the colony into another container. And so the old container died out, but the new container is doing fine. And actually, I would have considered that a bigger loss because I don't think people really keep pure St. Lucia already look very close. Pure St. Lucia already look pretty close to a lot of mainland U.S. vulgari. I mean, they look more closer to Punta Canas than Punta Canas due to U.S. mainland varieties of vulgari, but still, that was my biggest fear. There was that there may be more of a mix-up in with it would be more difficult for me to get pure St. Lucia's. So if anybody has Punta Canas, a colony you got years ago, and you've been keeping them going, and they're great and all this stuff, I really need those. I will probably put a pretty high bounty on the Punta Cana, the pure ones, probably like $15 for 100, or maybe as high as $200, depending on how much fortitude and veracity you can assert that your stock is pure, and perhaps do some line tracing. But I really need to get those back. I do miss the main ones. And I'll probably release the mutants in the fall. A lot of stuff is going to... The Roach Crossing overhaul that is happening is going to be even larger than the initial update to Roach Crossing where it got into its current form. It will be even bigger than that. There are, and I'm not exaggerating, there are hundreds of species I need to add to the website that I have not been able to. And with all of that is going to come new information, a new interface, all the stuff that I'm going to strong arm Chris into assisting with. So, green June bugs or grapevine beetles dying, so only living for a few weeks. A lot of those things don't live too long, actually, Panthera, in captivity. Pelodnota are pretty notorious for like pumping out a bunch of eggs and then dying, but like producing like hundreds of eggs. Thank you for being so enthusiastic about reading all of the posts, Tennyson. And if anybody here, somebody who might have one of those 3 species that I'm looking for, send them my way. Tell them that there's, either they'll get some they'll get some expensive isopods and swap, I guess I could get some rare stuff because I have all my Scabra lines and other things that are soiled elsewhere. But there's all kinds of things that I can offer, and I would really like to get this stock back if anybody's working with it. So let it be known. Let's see what else. What else? That was everything on my list here. And of course, Whiteout Scaber, but that's them beating a dead horse at that point. Somebody want a free mortgage or rent payment, or I don't know. Well, I guess it depends on how much mortgage or rent is where you live. It's still there. There's still a bounty on just a dozen Porcelio Scaber Whiteout. You prove that the stock originally came from me and hasn't been compromised. You get $1,000 in your pocket, and nobody's claimed that. So. Just kind of speaks to the state of how things are in the isopod world. Wait, Alan, did you have Punta Canas or one of the ones that I was just talking about? I'll just have to get it from you later. I trust you. Time to paint some Scaber white. So I have a backup plan if I can't get pure whiteouts, and it's very. Found a course in your ooth on a hickory leaf for Chrysina. Damn, that would have been nice. Hatch it out for me, Alan, and send me the babies if they don't all die the second they're born. So I have a backup plan for getting the single, just the whiteout allele. I have a backup plan. So a while ago, when it was shortly after, when was it? It was a little bit when iSpods were kind of starting to pick up steam. Not quite. Maybe like 2015, 2016, I sent some Porcelio Scaber Dalmatian to Anthony Molnar and to Oren at some point. At that, I can't even remember saying them to Oren. I definitely remember saying them to Anthony. And both of them, a couple of generations later, ended up having a whiteout pop up among the Dalmatians, so solid white eyes and all that stuff. And of course, that was the stock that was then turned into Spottergeist. Well, when I got some stuff from Oren last, I can't remember if it was this year or the year before. I got some stuff from him, and he had something called like Yellow Dalmatian or something weird like that. I just thought, maybe it's something weird. I'll pick it up from Oren. And so I got them from him. And he was like, yeah, these were like from those Dalmatians that you gave me. And I looked at them, and it was the whiteouts, the Spottergeist. And so Oren's been selling them under a different strain name because it's a mixture of regular Dalmatians, the Spottergeist, and then their hets, which have sort of like a lighter pinkish spotting because they're heterozygous for whiteout. So if I am unable to locate just the straight up whiteout strain, because I do have these Spottergeist from Orange still, what I'll do is I will just take my clean slate Porcelio Scaber, cross it to Spottergeist, and then I will do the painstaking process of extracting just the whiteout allele from that strain. And I have to sit here and think about what the exact line of stuff I'm going to have to do, because I'm trying to think. So crossing the two of them, the first generation will all be heterozygous for both characteristics. So what I then have to do is let the offspring reproduce, and then I have to find presumably the lowest quality Spottergeists, because those are most likely to be whiteout. Any of the ones that have like the traces of yellow, those are whiteouts without the Dalmatian allele. And then I have to breed those together. And then eventually I'm going to have to do another test. I'm going to have to do a test cross back to Dalmatian. And if the F1 produces Dalmatians, then I will know that that allele is still in the population. I have to keep trying to get it out of there. So this is literally years of work that I will have to do to get the single allele out of a line that's not compromised with other genetics. And so when I do that, Porcelio Scaber Whiteout will probably be hundreds of dollars for just a dozen because of the amount of work that has been entailed by having to get it out of there. And people will be critical. Somebody will be very critical and very vocal about it. But at the end of the day, people are going to pay or trade for it because they don't want compromised crap, especially if they're working on products or projects of different strains of scaber. So one of mine that I've kind of put on the back burner for now because obviously I've got a lot of stuff to do is there are plenty of pigment reduction, simple recessive pigment reduction alleles in Porcellio scaber. And what I would like to do is continue to compound those to work towards getting probably end up pretty close to a translucent isopod. Because my theory is if one pigment reduction allele reduces pigment, then if you've got like 4 or 5 of them, you will eventually end up with very little left in terms of standing in the way of just being a clear isopod. Now, there are some flaws to this line of thinking. Some of those pigments, if you take away multiple types of them, may compromise some intrinsic character to the exoskeleton. They may end up being high mortality in the womb or the marsupium. There's all kinds of unintended things that could go on here, but somebody's got to try, and I think I'm at the top of the list for doing that with Porcellio scaber. So I would like to get to that. I would like to see if I can make a completely translucent Porcellio scaber, because then everybody will think it's just the coolest thing ever. And imagine that. You could, if there's no pigment and you could view into the isopod, you could do all kinds of research on like how things move through the body. It'd be easier to see pigments and dyes that are injected, etc. For research. Porcellio scaber, John Cena. We'll see what happens. This is making me. I'm gonna start work on this the next time I do isopod husbandry. Although Spottergeist did not produce as many offspring with the upswing in summer humidity as I'd hoped they would. So I might have to wait for another generation of that, or ask Oren to send a couple more. He's supposed to send some things, I think next week. Zen Monkey says for $1,000 I can get a bottle of white out and paint some scabers. So, Coelacanth says I still need to look at my completely white orange Dalmatians to see if I have any actual whiteouts. Now, in some stock that I got from a certain vendor circa 2017, 2018 of orange Dalmatians, there were some that were very low expression, and for a time I was selectively breeding for that. And I did find that in this strain, whatever this other allele that was going on, you could breed for reduced spots or no spots in this strain of Porcellio scaber. My current orange Dalmatians my current stock is the ancient stuff. It's the stuff from, I think his name was Ryan or whatever. So it's all pure U.S. stock of Porcellio scaber, and not Rust from Aquarimax had crossed, I think, orange or Spanish orange into Dalmatian, and then derived his own orange Dalmatian line. I remember he was kind of surprised to hear that that the orange Dalmatian strain that was commercialized first and was distributed first was actually completely unrelated to orange or Dalmatian. So. So I see value in that. I just don't know if Russ picked a different name than Orange Dalmatian for the stock, or maybe he said he added a footnote if he distributed it, or maybe just kept them all for himself. You get more different characteristics in the Dalmatians. They may express differently or better. I just haven't done it because it's a little redundant for me to do, and I have I have all these other projects that I would like to do, and somebody's already done it. So. Satchel got them for me not Satchel, sorry, Coelacanth. This is your Coelacanth. Yours and Satchel's avatars are very similar on my eyes for some reason. They're both kind of like Renaissance era painting color schemes. So you got them for me in late 2021. So yeah, it's Orange Dalmatian. That's from that Ryan. I think his name's Ryan K. I don't even know if he really works with isopods a lot anymore. It's also the origin of U.S. orange, which I did save that colony. I lost them, and then Derek Niehaus sent me his last male U.S. orange, which he had in with another bin for another project. So he sent me the male, and then I paired it with a female orange Dalmatian, and then produced. Now it's a mixture of hets and regular oranges and orange Dalmatians, but it's the same line because the U.S. orange line is the line that gave birth to the orange Dalmatian. They're both out of the colony that Ryan K started, or maybe it was Ryan Marr or something. It's on Roach Crossing on the page for them. It's the same colony that he started from like one individual in like New Jersey or something. That's another thing. All of this information about strain origins, where I've acquired things from, and how, as much as I can find out about different species origins and strain origins, will all be on the updated Roach Crossing website, maybe even its own section, especially for isopods, because that stuff is very important and grows more important by the day with the mud fest that is the isopod hobby. So all that information will be there and fully accessible to everybody too. Obviously, I mean, I felt like somebody's got to put it. You go to a lot of isopod sites now, and there's a touch splash of flavor text and like, oh, this is an easy species, and all this stuff. But then you don't have any other information. It's like, where is it found in the wild? Where did it come from? How long has it been cultured? All this other stuff. That's all information that I look to get onto Roach Crossing with the update. There will be a lot of information added about basically everything that I can tell about all the strains that I work with and where they've come from. And I think that will be very valuable to people and very eye-opening to a lot of people as well. LC, there will be an auction this fall. The problem is, last year I did the auction to the week before Tinley Park to beat Tinley Park so people could get some stuff. And Tinley Park last year, I think, was like the second weekend in October. So the auction was the first weekend in October. This year, it's likely that the auction will be the last weekend in September. So it's very likely that the auction this fall will be September 29th, or 3 days, oh Lord. September 30th and October 1st. I think I want to keep it to the weekend. Yeah, as best as I can. There will be an overflow day or something. Maybe I'll do a Friday one. I don't know. But definitely October 1st and September 30th is when it's looking like the auction will be this year, because Tinley Park is the first weekend in October this year. You have any Hercules beetles available? I have larvae coming available of 1 or 2 species. So keep in touch about that with locality information. Oh, I do have Dynastes Hercules available too. So yes, I do have Hercules beetles available, but also the other ones are locality/strain of Titius and Dynastes grantii. And I hope to have, Tropoxylus dichotomous within the next 6 months. Hopefully I got a rear mind to adulthood. So, Tennyson, was your stock U.S. orange or Spanish orange? I do distinguish between the two. Also interesting, again, Spanish orange, that's entirely from stock somewhere from Spain, where Oren originally got them from. That's why they're called Spanish orange. And orange calicos are also pure Spanish stock from before all this craziness was happening with isopods. And I do have orange calicos, and I have plenty of things derived from them. So, so they're probably actually Spanish orange. Again, there have been many changes of hands because that line has been around for like 25, 30 years at this point. So, they've been some dart frog dealer would have them, and they say like, oh yeah, I mixed them with a couple my buddy gave me from outside or something, and then I just pull out all the gray ones. So I got mine straight from Oren in like 2011, 2012, whenever my young childlike eyes turned from the Roach's page on Bugs in Cyberspace to the Isopods page and its gigantic, massive, extensive selection of about 9 species in 2011. Trust me, man, those were the days. 9 species, you had to keep them all. that was the extent of isopods. If you didn't have Porcellio dilatatus, you're nobody. Get out of here. We don't even want to see your face. So that's when I acquired them from Oren, straight from him. So I got them again straight from the source, which is what I prefer to do with all this stuff, because you never know how many hands have changed over something and whether or not stuff has happened. That was peak Icebot hobby. You cannot change my mind. I still have fantasies about the time where Eric Maxwell told me that he had collected Nyambia capensis. That was probably around 2015 or 2016, and I just thought, wow, this is incredible. Another isopod in culture, amazing. We will never get better than this. And also Immaculatum, getting Armadillo Immaculatum for the first time was pretty transformative, because it was like, wow, this is just what this thing looks like. I didn't have to do any titillation with its genetics or population structure, special localities, mutations, etc. This thing just looks like this. So that was fun too. Speaking of which, again, Armadillidium maculatum, at some point there was a turnover of stock from overseas and old hobby stock in the United States. And now a lot of the stock that you see of zebra isopod at expos has that weird like marbling look to it. Again, I think this is a pathogen at play here. I think it might be the same one that is responsible for the coloration in the Porcellio scaber, because I have isolated a couple of lines that have that as a characteristic in them. And it's heritable, but it doesn't seem to be genetic. Hi, some eggs. Good to see you. So yeah, I believe the original Armadillidium maculatum stock was said to be from Germany, like wild collected in Germany somewhere. And then from there, at some point, I believe it was French stock that was then introduced, and that seems to be where some of those other genetics or other pathogens or other characteristics were mixed in, and nobody kept track of the stock. So I'm debating whether or not I want to relabel with the Roach Crossing update my stock as being like old hobby stock or potential German line or something like that. But yeah, because I look at them and like, wow, these are so big and so colorful, and oh look, there's some spotted ones and some stripy ones, and it's nice, good size, etc. Yeah, Tennyson, what do you think I should do? What name do you think I should use for the stock if I decide to go that route? Because I do feel it is important. Not that I know exactly where it comes from, but people want zebra isopods and not weird multicolored fake zebra isopod. So old hobby stock, yeah. I've been labeling a lot of the old stuff from Bugs in Cyberspace. I've already put that label on my colonies of. I feel like it's a good thing to have, because some stuff like the old hobby stock of Porcellio levis is what gave us caramel, and then how now after that. So some egg says my Aglauteryx gemma seemed to be crashing after booming last spring. Tell me some things about your setup. If you have my number or just to my email, send me a picture of your setup. Aglauteryx like to be pretty dry, and now that it's summertime, the air humidity is very high and airflow may be lower, or you may have cool air blowing on your colonies. They don't really like that. So Carlos is releasing multiple localities to the public. Yeah, I have a couple of localities. I have the Arizona Giant. I need to ask Ben where they originally collected. True Cali stock. I'm pretty sure that the old hobby stock of Levis is actually Cali stock, but I would have to ask Peter from Bugs in Cyberspace to confirm, since he's the one who originally sold and distributed it. Or might actually know too. Tennyson, has anybody isolated the orange allele in Porcellio dilatatus? Oh, the Cali mix. That's another thing with the with those. That's another situation where I think it's a pathogen involved, because with the Cali mix, I've tried to isolate those weird individuals multiple times. I've grabbed females with swollen marsupium, and I cannot get that trait isolated. They have to persist as a mix, and I think that maybe it's just a strain that has a resistance to whatever this is. Marathon Runner says, good evening, everyone. Welcome, Marathon Runner. I'm pretty sure you're new here, so welcome. Can I ask about basic care difference between Panchlora and Eublaberus distanti? Eublaberus distanti, burrowing cockroach found in caves, likes a couple of inches of substrate, not too picky about what substrate, not really too picky about high or low humidity. In the wild, it actually seems to be in the drier parts of caves compared to other Eublaberus species. Diet is pretty much anything, but you can't go wrong offering either fish flakes and dog food, and one of those two, and a fruit or a vegetable at the same time. Panchlora nivea, a little bit more of a sensitive species in some ways. They like a rich organic matter substrate, not necessarily a high humidity, but the adults are kind of prone to drying out, especially if they run out of like something to get moisture from, like their food. And I'm noticing more and more a lot of Panchlora like a heavy component of wood in their substrate. They're found in it a lot in the wild, so it only makes sense to sort of offer more of that to them. So, Tennyson, I would like to know if anybody has the crystal dilatatus isolated. I was offered some seemingly leucistic dilatatus a while ago, and I kept her with, I did the standard things to isolate the trait, and I did the inbreeding and all that stuff, and nothing. The trait was not heritable for some reason, even though it was a solid white dilatatus with black eyes, lived a long life, produced a lot of offspring. The trait just for some reason was not heritable. And I also had a pied dilatatus that was almost certainly the result of damage to the individual that it healed out of, and that was not heritable either. So that's probably why some of those other ones, it might not be heritable in dilatatus. I do have a line of like brownish red or brownish orangish dilatatus I've been calling caramel. I've sold them to a handful of people over the years who were interested. I have another line from that same colony that produced those oddballs that I just told you guys about, and I think, what was his name? Mike Evans. It was at Tinley 2018, 2017. He brought this gigantic 120-gallon tote of dilatatus, and he was selling it to Josh's frogs because they wanted it for, obviously, they wanted a lot of isopods. And so before he sold them, he said, Kyle, look through the colony, see if there's anything weird. I picked out these 2 or these 3. Here you go, try and isolate them. And I looked at it, I was like, okay, I'll look around and see if there's anything in here. I looked through thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of Porcellio dilatatus in this colony, could not find anything that deviated from just the standard dark black aesthetic. So I actually have that line still labeled as Mike Evans. And I guess they're darker than the old hobby stock dilatatus that I have. So that's nice. But I'll release caramel in the fall. Again, it's not much, but maybe stacked with another trait if a mutation ever gets isolated from them, maybe it could be cool. A couple of people are talking about some success with glow spots. That's excellent. Satchel says, dilatatus in my experience have been the most indestructible Porcellio. For some reason I had bad luck with scaper, but I've had a strong colony since I collected them in New Mexico in 2014. I didn't know that your dilatatus came from New Mexico. I didn't even know they were there, actually. Tennyson says, also alleged peach morph, but I haven't seen it, just heard it. Kyle, whatever came of the gold dubias? Again, I still have them. I haven't done much work with the line. I put them into a full-size enclosure. The amber dubias will be going on the site in the fall. I have plenty of those. The colonies are fully established. I'm trying to think, are there any roach morphs I need to get out soon? The unnamed gold dubias that need some work still is what they are. Oh yeah, Shinigami. I might release it after this next generation. I'm waiting for there's some males. I'm trying to pair up the best of the best this next generation. So I had separate all the females, got to pick the best pronotum one, got all the males in a mixed colony, just have to pull the best males out when they pop up. But more exciting, though, actually, is huge progress with a lot of my hissing cockroach projects. Huge projects. Not projects. Huge success with a lot of them. The Lilliputians, the stupidly tiny Portentosa, finally getting some consistency. I think this is the third generation. Finally getting consistency in size. It must be very hardwired in hissers to sort of have a range of, to have a plasticity of in the population of sizes. And even harder than breeding the males down in size, breeding the females down in size. Most of the females are still normal hisser size. There are a couple that I will be using for the next gen that are smaller, but it's, there must be something very important about having larger females or keeping a consistent female size in hissing cockroaches, at least in Portentosa, because they've been very resistant to the selective process. I might even show off the next stud for the next generation of the Lilliputians. I think I left him in the kitchen. I put him in a spare container to take him downstairs to pair him up with the females. So he might be in the kitchen, so I might get up and go do that. Also noticing it's 1:20. This has been hour and 20 minutes. This has been a good stream. Tennyson, I have 2 Masola projects separated out already. One I need to talk to TJ about before I say any more about it. But yeah, so a lot of things moving in hissing cockroach domain, and hoping to have. I'm in it for the long run, obviously, so I'm not going to rush getting these projects out. But I'll release like a trio of hisser lines, likely. Any update on the Androhomana female? Still big, still no babies, and TJ hasn't gotten any babies out of his either. What I'm probably going to do is I'll probably redo their setup again and get the Dipteretrum out of there in case that's factoring in, although I don't really think it is. I'm probably going to redo the setup again. I'm probably going to take the male Androhomana and pair him with some of the females from that most likely pure hobby line, just so that I can get those genetics into things. And I will just, be very careful and keep that off as a sideline, but just so that we have some of that phenotype trait in culture. There may be some moral questionableness to doing that, but I have not had any hisser escapes in a very long time. And by escapes, I mean just out into the room. Actually, the last hissing cockroach that got out was the founding male for another hissing cockroach project that I'm not going to talk about yet. I'll probably give it I'll wait one more generation and then I'll talk about this next project. But this singular male got out in my basement for 4 months. And then one day, I think I was just washing containers in the laundry room, or maybe I was doing laundry, and he just crawled out from underneath the wall that was cut out from over there. He just crawled out from underneath it, covered in dust, just like, hey, how's it going? Which is funny because I'm pretty sure that's where he crawled into months earlier. So he probably just crawled in there, sat and did nothing for months, except for maybe come out and drink the water that splashed off the sink tub for a bit and then just went back into there. So that was the last time a hisser got out. So I don't feel too bad about it, and I will obviously not be selling them as Androhomanas. I'll come up with some other name for the strain and mention that it was founded by a male Androhomana. So they've been easy to contain for me so far. Yeah, with the Roach no crossing bear, a lot of people complain about hissers getting out and the Vaseline and all this stuff. I don't know if there's other commercial products that have popped up over the years, but like nowadays, when I was living with my parents, I was always like, oh my gosh, I have to keep the hissers maintained, I have to keep them isolate and separate. Got to make sure all the screens are touched up. Got to do the gasket. Got to clamp the lids and do all this stuff and craziness. And I remember I'd still find them on like the lid and stuff like that. But now with the Roach no crossing, with the new setups I use, that never even happens anymore. I'm just like, oh, it's just another roach in a bin. Like it's just they're basically I treat them like non-climbing roaches is how effectively the Roach no crossing stuff works. So it's been great. It's been great, and I haven't had any of those worries. I should say one of my other projects I'm going to work on starting pretty soon with Elliptorhina is so I'm breeding Gronfodorina portentosa down in size, and I want to get them, maybe I'll make the line available when the male size is like consistently like 2 inches. Actually, I don't know how big that male is in the other room. I should go get him. He might actually be like 2 inches long. So maybe like 1.5 inches. I'll try and get it as small as possible in the next 2 generations. So I might actually have to open this up all the way, and I might have to turn on the light pretty soon. So I'm breeding the portentosa down. The next thing is breeding Elliptorhina chopardi up in size, and I'm really looking forward to that because I do have a couple of good sized males in the colony right now. But then breed those up in size and see if we can get those into the like 3-inch range. Get them about the same size as Javanica would be great. It's just fascinating how you can, over the course of like not even my lifetime, but over the course of a couple of years, I've been able to scale up or scale down major characteristics in these organisms. It's just very fascinating. And the only problem I can see with this is I got to talk to TJ and Alan and a couple of other people about this too. But moving into the future with roach stock, maybe labeling stuff as hobby stock, because as we have access to wild stock and whatnot of different things and localities. But somebody's walking their dog, of course. Where I'm going with this is, I could see one day where people would just keep Elliptorhina chopardi and just have, if I scaled them up in size, they'd like, why would you want the small ones? Why would you want the wild type? Why not just get the hobby stock that's like gigantic? And you could lose the unique genetic characteristics of the older stock as people come to prefer something else. So finding a way to distinguish all of the roach stock, maybe even just slapping again the hobby strain name on it or something for some of the mainstays, might be the way to go. Panthera says, we recently had an adult female smoky brown roach we rescued from the dog. We didn't know she was gravid one day. Babies everywhere. Yeah, isn't it delightful? I'm going to go get that male Lilliputian right now. Hello. This thing is so small. Guys. Let me get some more light in here. This thing is so small. I think in my brain, I remember this guy being bigger than he is, but look at the size of this. Look at the size of this hisser, of this Gronfodorina portentosa. Look at this thing. Look at how tiny that is. This is an adult male. This is an adult male Gronfodorina portentosa. Again, I think we're on the F3 or F4 of the Lilliputian project. It's so tiny. And I'll put it up to I have the eye ruler pulled up here. I'm going to put him on the screen and see. Don't want to lose the founding stock male. I'm going to see if he'll cooperate, just how big he is. So if I kind of stretch out the abdomen a little bit here, he's about, forcing him to flatten out just a bit. So not necessarily like the natural resting size, but he's about annoying size for one. Come on. I'll give an inches measurement, then I'll give the millimeters. Okay, he's about 2 2.25, maybe like two and a quarter, 60 millimeters, 6 centimeters, 2.25 inches. I'll go with 6 centimeters. So he's 6 centimeters long. This thing is ridiculously tiny. So, and again, this is the result of several generations of downbreeding in size. So this male cohort is the consistently smallest male cohort that I have produced in this line. This obviously was the best individual. This is the smallest one. There were several that were close, but what I've kind of been using as a litmus test for breeding the size down is the pronotum width. So in addition to taking the body length into account, I've also been taking the pronotum width into account and trying to scale that down. So hi, little man, I like that. But now let me show you something else. For comparison, I'm not going to say too much about this other line. I want to keep it under wraps for now. But there's a couple of things going on with it. I'm not gonna bring it up just yet. But for comparison, this is not an LLE mahogany, but LLE mahoganies were derived from Portentosa, Cleveland. This is originally from the Cleveland strain individual and not related to mahogany. That little tiny male, the Lilliputian line, and some of the other ones I'm working with are all derived from mahogany. They're all different other traits that have popped up in mahogany. So behold, he's getting old. Behold these two Gramphidorina portentosa males. You versus the guy she tells you not to worry about, basically, going on here. So yeah, it's kind of like this little guy could ride on the big. Look at the size difference. Look at this thing. It's crazy. Like this is just a couple generations of selective breeding at this, and then there's this thing over here, this big boy. So very hissy. So yeah, I'm really getting into working with Portentosa for breeding different sizes, characteristics, physical characteristics, colors, patterns, temperaments, a lot of things. You versus the Armenian she told you not to worry about. But yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff. I think the Roach hobby 5 years from now is going to be a magical place. I really think that. Can you make a hisser that actually moves? I mean, he'll move maybe. I mean, I don't know why you'd want him to move. It's kind of nice when they just sort of sit there. But yeah, I think the Roach hobby in 5 years is going to be a fascinating place. Let me really quick before I get on train to wrap up this stream. Let me just sort of think about where roaches were 5 years ago. 5 years ago. 5 years ago, obviously, was bad time for Kyle. Not directly 5 years ago. It would still be a couple months till it was a bad time for Kyle. But 5 years ago, let's see, we still had. I love how I immediately go to what things we had that we don't have now, versus thinking what do we have now that we didn't have then. But 5 years ago, Gyna Cappuccina was kind of going on its way out in culture before having a rebound. Lanxoblata rudis was still kind of being cultured by people. L. rudis seems to be dead in the U.S. hobby, unfortunately. What else? Analacta was about to sort of go away for a bit. There were pseudoglomerus, but not very many of them. Nobody seemed to have, I don't think anybody had any luck with them until like maybe a year or two later. But yeah, no Eucharidia. What else didn't we have? Hissers were kind of that would have been the end of the old Princessia Van Weerebeck eye line for sure. The ones that I had, they were kind of like I was struggling on them, and of course that might not matter now because we seem to have pure stock once more, so that's good. Elliptorina David, I think we're kind of still puddling around. Man, what all have we? We didn't have all these Aaron Vega. We didn't have all the Aaron Vega. Stylopyga were on their way out too. What else? What else? Didn't have maybe we had just gotten some of the stuff that we really appreciate now, like Blabberus species Honduras. Adult sun beetles. I don't know. Is this just a question? Adult sun beetles? Question mark. Our tiny ectobioid, ectobiidae, Blattellidae, Pseudophilodromidae, etc. were people would get them and then kill them or have crazy success with them and then lose them. There was no consistency really on a larger scale. Parkoblatta, well, Alan, I guess Parkoblatta is still kind of where it's always been, but at least, I'm having more success with them now. So that's good. But I'm trying to think about patterns as a whole here. I didn't have Hemithyrsospora vittata. I didn't have my second favorite cockroach in culture. So that's nice. That came out of this. Panacea, nobody in the U.S. really had them. Still waiting to get Spatica. We really like to keep Spatica. Really would like to keep those. What else? No Masola portentosa. We didn't have Gyna CF sculpturata. We didn't have as many Panchlora as we do now, including the I think we had just barely gotten speckleds, maybe. Geez, this is harder than I thought. Still had Eurycotis opaca in culture, although I guess they're back now. I need to try and get Guadalupe's again at some point. I don't even know if anybody in the U.S. still has them. Alan, do people still have Guadalupe? Well, actually, in 2018, I still had Panchlora species white. They were still doing okay for me back then, I think. So, but yeah, that's another one. Kind of everybody fumbled across the board over time. It happens. We didn't have Pyrospherus punctatus. We didn't have Bantua robusta. That's very important. I love me my Bantua robusta. They're doing very well for me. I have Guadalupe. Alan, I need to get some species Guadalupe from you eventually, whenever you produce an excess. I don't know if there's any of the species that you want. We didn't have Hormetica. That's true. What else? We didn't have Afrostylopiga. Very important. Afrostylopiga is no Fortioica either. Again, I just sort of look over at this rack and I just see a wall of Aranavega, most of which I just finished bumping into their final enclosures yesterday when I was doing husbandry. But still upset. I lost the ones from north of Torwheat. I will go on and on about that. I don't think anybody's going back there, so I'm very upset about that. What else did I lose? The Pina Blanca 2 aren't doing as good as I thought. Pina Blanca 1 are doing phenomenal. Pina Blanca 2 aren't doing so hot. We didn't have Hemiblabra tenebricosa or granulata back then. Satchel says, did I mention I'm joining the dark side and getting an Aranavega? Panthera, do you have any Harlequin flower beetles? Yes, I have larvae available. Shoot me an email, and I can get some to you. What else? But, again, I really love to focus on things that aren't doing well or that fail. We didn't have Baltas either. But what else failed? What other Arena Vega failed that I kind of am upset about? Monahans, Arena Vega species Monahans failed. I'm upset about that. Fort Stockton did not fail, though. Just looking to see Arena Vega. Fort Stockton must be downstairs. I still have my Floridensis. They're doing okay. Fort Stockton, Arena Vega must be downstairs. That's a colony I started with one female I found out in the trash lands behind the gas station. Will and I stopped that while he was talking to his wife on the phone. So I'm happy about that. It's probably the same species as the Monahans ones, but I'm not 100% sure, honestly. Las Cruces. This is like the fourth time I've killed Las Cruces. I'll go back there eventually. I'm not too worried about it because it's so en route to everything going around the Southwest. I'll be back in Las Cruces eventually, and I know exactly where to go to find them. I think I have like one female left, so she could be gravid. She could lay some eggs. But I don't know what went wrong there. But the funny thing about the Las Cruces Arena Vega is the Arena Vega didn't do so well in the enclosure, but the spider beetles and the silverfish are breeding. So, gotta pick your battles, pick your victories. So happy about that. Yeah. So Fort Stockton probably is probably I need to upgrade to one of these enclosures. So get this. I'm going to go off on another tangent here. So I ordered a bunch of faunariums and critter keepers off of Amazon because they have the best pricing and the most reliable availability. And they just got them to me today, and they did the thing where they bundle stuff to save you boxes or whatever. So I go outside this morning, and there's about 10 huge Amazon boxes on my sidewalk and on my porch. And so I bring them all into the house thinking, like, what did I order? Like, why are there so many boxes? Usually it's just like one or two boxes for these things. And they had actually shipped some of the faunariums individually in these like 2 foot by 1.5 by 1.5 boxes. So I open this box, there's like a bunch of plastic packaging, and there's one faunarium in it. And then I open another box, the same thing. What else? So anyway, so that happened. They actually forgot the lid on one of them. I felt really bad because I left the review on Amazon. I was like, missing or broken piece. You like forgot the lid, and it's like, well, now they're gonna send me a whole new thing, even though it's just the lid that was missing. And I have more lids. I have spare lids downstairs, but oh well. Yes, Muti, good to see you. I think this is your first time here. Welcome. And to buy on the website, go to the contact us page. Let me know your zip code as well as what you're interested in, and I'll get you a price quote for things. Alan, if you go back to Ocala for Black Floridensis, I will help to pay for your trip because I want the Ocala ones again. I had that one female that lived for like a year and a half or 2 years, and I didn't have any males for her by the time that I corrected the husbandry setup. So I really want those again. But Tampa and Lake Placid are doing pretty well, actually. I thought the Tampas, again, I moved them to a new setup, a bit smaller, basically the same thing I was doing before, but a bit smaller. And I was like, oh man, they're not doing so hot. And then I checked on them yesterday, and I had a bunch of newborns, so a bunch of ooths hatched. So I'm very happy about that. So, and Lake Placid seemed to be doing just fine too. And I'm again very happy about that. And the new style setups are basically the same as the old, just a bit different. So I was ranting about Arena Vega, Las Cruces not doing so well. Boliana have cracked the secret there. It's not much of a secret. Uncle Fengus told me straight up, like I attribute my success with those to the Texas oak leaves. I got a buddy who ships me a bag of them every whatever amount of time, and sometimes you need to listen to important pieces of information, and that's one of them. So I've been going heavy with the leaf litter on all 3 of my Boliana colonies, and Del Rio was struggling the most. Not too bad, but they were, I mean, I thought I lost them. Then I found out there were a good number of nymphs. There's like 30, 40 in there. Added more oak leaf litter, not even terribly well rotted, just, a lot of it. And aged, it's from outside, so it's been weathered and lost some of the tannins, all this stuff. Boliana just shred through leaves. Even if they're dry, they just destroy them. And I wonder if the adults sort of enable the younger ones to feed by eating the leaves first, pooping out partially digested leaves that are covered full of bacteria, and then the babies eat those. I'm wondering if that's the case. I can't really see young Boliana being capable enough to chew through tough oak leaves, and yet the colonies are doing phenomenal. So that's the key with Boliana, is give them an inch of sand, keep it half moist, half dry, and just load on the oak leaves, load on the leaf litter. There's cottonwood mixed in there too. They're eating that, so just load on the leaf litter. So Alan confirms in the wild that Boliana are usually found in association with lots of leaf litter. So there you go. You want to keep Aranavega Boliana? You could probably feed them exclusively leaves too. But what I found with them and a couple of other roaches, like Echinoptera derapeltiformis, is the leaves seem to do something important for their digestion. It's either the fiber, the microbes they encourage, the microbes they have, something. They need the leaves moving through their system. But that doesn't mean that's all they'll eat. But when they have that proper diet, their appetite for other things goes up as well. So my Echinoptera derapeltiformis colonies have been eating a lot more than ever now that they have reliable stashes of organic matter. Again, it seems to facilitate movement of stuff through the digestive tract. And then they also eat other things on top of that. And so you get a very big, good, vigorous colony. But this seems to be the case with something like Aranavega Boliana, because they went from kind of having a sparing appetite before to just eating through everything that I put in there. And again, I think it's the leaves, something, the roughage, it makes them regular. The something with the degradation of the leaves in the gut and the way they digest it, blah, blah, blah. I don't know the exact mechanism. All I can tell you is that it works. So if you're going to be working with Aranavega Boliana, that's your cheat code, is make sure you have lots of leaf litter for them. Anyway, so Aranavega Boliana doing great. That's one I wasn't doing well with years ago, and now I've got 3 localities doing great. So that's good. What's really turned around? Again, I'm upset about Las Cruces. I love that locality of Aranavega. Whatever species it is, might be my favorite. I lost all of my true desert Aranavega, the CF camera investigata from Yuma and surrounding areas. I'm not really sure what I did wrong. I kept them like the other Aranavegas. Maybe I was subconsciously keeping them too dry. Maybe I should have added some leaf litter or some more rotted, dead organic material on the top. So I don't know exactly what I did wrong with that species. I would like to try them again. I don't know when I'm next going to go back to Yuma or any of those areas. And furthermore, this last year was kind of an anomaly because of the amount of rain that hit those places right before I got there. There was a lot of stuff active and a lot of stuff really easily accessible in the burrows, like the Cubaris benetensis were just like right in the burrows in large numbers, even at a place where I'd went to years before and found none, doing the same burrow fisting and whatnot. So I don't know if the weather is going to be conducive for finding Aranavega at that time in those places, even if I go back. So I have a contact who's out there and who's out there very regularly, and I've told them to keep an eye out for those for me again. And they sent me some last year, obviously didn't do well, but they're more than happy to send more this year. So I'm going to give them another go this year. If they can find some more adult females. Maybe it'll be another year, maybe it'll be 2 years before I get to try them again. Doesn't matter. We'll see. Let's see what else. For the most part, though, again, I focus on all these failures. But Arima have not bred for me, but they're still alive. I just had an adult male pass away, which isn't too surprising. They basically exist to have sex and then die, which I guess is just basically all living things, but on a much slower scale for some of us. Um, anyway, so the Arima are doing quite well, and Alan was the male died. The adult male died right before the subadult female matured, and Alan was kind enough to send me a subadult male that he just collected on his trip. And TJ is supposed to send me a female that Alan meant to send me, but it is a whole mix-up thing. So I'm getting another female to add to the enclosure, and I feel pretty confident about getting them to breed. I would imagine if that subadult male matures and the adult female reproduces with him, and if this coming adult female is comfortable with these other individuals, they get a nice allele effect. They find a nice little hole to Kuji into in the enclosure. I imagine that this species might do very well for me, and we'll see. Again, this is maybe it's failure in slow motion, or maybe it's success in slow motion. But I know they're called like the desert hairy cockroach. I looked at the first publication that's used in, and it's like an informal, just sort of like a history or culture of cockroaches in type thing. It's a very brief publication, but the only published. It's not even a scientific publication. It's like a little pamphlet or like reading thing. But I think they need a better name. I think maybe the hairy cowboy roach or something might be a better name, since they're found on land that's extensively used for cattle grazing. And they kind of look like they're wearing a pair of buttless chaps, which I was told all chaps are buttless. But it's still fun to say buttless chaps regardless. So, Stephen Logan, do you think a vacuum would work instead of fisting? I'm not trying to get KO'd, aside from the obvious drawback of packing a vacuum. Yes, it could. The problem I've had with it's okay, Stephen. Great to have you. The problem I've had with using other implements to look for air in a vega, gloves, scoops, shovels, is either maneuvering it into the hole, because those rodent burrows are not the biggest things. And sometimes you have to excavate them with your hand anyways, and damaging the air in a vega. They are little meat sacks, and if you push them too hard, you scrape them too hard, they pop, and they don't recover from being popped. So I've always found it easiest to, sort of gently ease my hand in, kind of get a nice scoop full of sand, pull it out, casually go through it, all that jazz. And that's always worked well for me. And actually, the only times I've been stung by something was scorpions twice. The first time I saw the scorpion, and I was an idiot, and I kept going after the roaches anyway. So I saw the scorpion crawl. I lifted like a piece of wood fence post thing in Rodeo, New Mexico, and saw the scorpion go into this little side hole burrow thing, and thought, oh, he's gonna, probably goes a bit further than I see. Scorpion's gonna just go all the way to the back of it, and that's gonna be it. So I went scooping for sand roaches, and what do you know? I got stung by the scorpion. It was just like a Paravovis or something like that. Finger went numb a little bit, and hurt a little bit. It's actually funny because after I got stung, I saw two recluses crawl out of the same hole, and I was just like, this is how I die. But it wasn't. And that was fine. And the other time was somewhere in West Texas, where there was a whole rodent burrow complex that, we found this one area. There were jackrabbit holes, kind of a menacing aura coming out of them. And I just thought, I'll just ignore what my instincts are telling me. I know I've been fisting all these burrows and not feeling any sort of like fear or shame or anything. But this one time that my brain is telling me don't do this, I'll do it. So I think I went into the one hole and I felt around and I pulled it out, and it was, Alan, they were either ticks or like tick-like harvestmen in the one burrow there. And then I put my hand to the other one, and I pulled it out and went it up to like my shoulder or something. I pulled it out, and I felt some weird sensation up and down my arm. And then I looked, and it was covered in fleas. And so I should not have fisted those burrows. But anyways, we drove a bit further down the road, and we found this other burrow complex. It was all in sort of soft clay sand. So we went about excavating the whole thing. Did find Aranavegos, probably Tonkawa. Obviously lost the culture by now. What else? Oh, and I found some cool cave crickets, which I did breed, but I didn't culture. I really wish I could have kept those going because those are really cool. There was like Sulophyllus marmoratus or something. Very, very cool cave crickets. I definitely want those again. Anyways, so it was like at the end I was getting greedy. I wanted more Aranavega, and I was at like tearing up this whole burrow system, and then stuck my hand in and felt the pain on I think it was my pointer finger, and then I was like, it's time to stop. It's time to stop. And I went back to the car. I think I told Alan, Satchel, and Will, the numbness is slowly going up my finger, so I'm just letting you guys know if it goes any further, one of you is going to need to drive. And the numbness went up to about here, and then it stopped, and then it was just sort of tender for a couple of days. So that's been my experience with fisting burrows. And yeah, I guess the most recent one was in 2021 was the one Paravihovis or whatever, the striped tail in rodeo. So, but I've never found anything other than invertebrates in the burrows, and except for one time, which is again also in rodeo, where I was just sort of walking along the fence row and I saw a burrow and I was like, I'll just sort of put my hand in there, grab around a little bit, pull it out. And I went to put my hand in and I felt something fluffy, and I was just sort of like, oh. And whatever I grabbed didn't move. It just sort of sat there, and pulled my hand back, and I looked, and it was a jackrabbit just sitting at the entrance of its burrow with its butt sticking out. And then it just took off, at the speed of light. We both just sort of looked at each other for a second, then it just ran off. So I've got a good track record so far, with that. I will continue to fist burrows into the future. But fortunately, not all Aranavega need to be fisted out of burrows. So anyways, other than that, so I went over the failed Aranavega, but the fact of the matter is most of the ones that I collected are actually doing very well and have formed colonies of at least 100 and will be put up on the website, and then Heidi Hopkins will be sent mails as more pop up and I'm able to salvage them for identification. So let's just go over the lovely list of Aranavega that are doing pretty well that are in this room. There's about 6 other culture species that are in the bug room downstairs that I'm in the process of upgrading. But let's go over what's doing well. Go look on the Aranavega shelf. Aranavega species Miller Canyon, Arizona. Aranavega species Deming, New Mexico. This is where I got out of the car and looked around in some rubble for about an hour to find 3 Aranavega nymphs while Will sat suffering in the vehicle, acting like he was dying even though he was not. And he told me that I better get them cultured. So I brought them home. They reproduced sparingly to the point where I only had 3 nymphs. Those nymphs all reached adulthood, and now I'm waiting on the first ooths to hatch. So pleasant words to you, Will. Aranavega species The Thing, Arizona, collected from the infamous The Thing in Arizona. Aranavega species Fort Hancock. Maybe that's the one I was thinking of. Fort Hancock and not somewhere else. I can't remember. There's a lot of fort places in Texas. Aranavega boliana, Bernie, Texas. Aranavega species Arizona. Aranavega species Florida Canyon, Arizona. Aranavega species Animas, New Mexico. Tentatively identified as 10X, but I think TJ retracted that identification. I have no Aranavega from Utah. That's going to be up to you, Tennyson. And I'm pretty sure there's a couple undescribed species in southern Utah, so get on it. This is a good season for them. Aranavega species Mount Ord, Arizona. Aranavega species Texas Canyon, Arizona. Aranavega boliana Del Rio, Texas. Aranavega Tonkawa from near San Antonio, Texas. Aranavega species El Prado, New Mexico. very excited about the El Prados. They have one of the largest wing to body ratios of any cockroach I've seen, and definitely the largest wing to body ratio of any Aeronavega. The fact that the habitat these come from, it must be so awful for these Aeronavega to exist there. The males probably have to fly very far between clusters of mates. When I was in that place and they're bulldozing all this creosote scrub to put in subdivisions and all this stuff, but still miles of it. This was the only place for miles that had reasonable habitat for these Aeronavega. It was a small rise, so it was a bit drier because this was clay and sand, but mostly clay. And I really had to spend a lot of time there getting enough of these guys. But again, the males, they're really long. They're over an inch long, and most of its wing. It's pretty crazy. And I'm sure it's an adaptation to be able to fly longer distances to go between colonies to actually, mate. So that's Aeronavega species El Prado, New Mexico. That was one of my target Aeronavegas last year. Aeronavega CF Tonkawa. It says San Angelo, Texas, but it's actually from University of Texas, San Angelo, so we don't know exactly where it's from. It could have been locally collected. Aeronavega species Rodeo, New Mexico. Aeronavega species Pina Blanca, Arizona, 1. Aeronavega species Amado, Arizona, 2 species mixed in there. Aeronavega Apache, Cave Creek Canyon, Arizona, one of my favorites, very sentimental for me. Aeronavega species Mescalero Sand Dunes, New Mexico. So deceptive when you're poking around in the sand there and you think after 20 minutes of searching you found a Remoblata, but you actually found an Aeronavega. Very annoying. Let's see. Aeronavega species Sahuarita, Arizona. Maybe I may label those as Green Valley at some point. Sahuarita. Basically the same thing. Aeronavega Boliana, McAllen, Texas. And then there's another 6 or so downstairs. Oh, Aeronavega Floridensis, Tampa. Aeronavega Floridensis, Lake Placid. So that's all of the Aeronavega that I have that are up here that I can remember. Again, there's another 6 or 7 or so downstairs that need to be upgraded. So pretty happy with that. Tennyson says, hope to also get TJ some Utah Benitez and maybe him and me some Yuri Bunis, but we'll see how things go. What is Yuri Bunis? Also a shame that it was a flop for Lucanus Mazama this year. Oh, yeah, those guys, the Harvestmen. Yeah. I think I'm going to get more into Harvestmen when I move. I mean, I stock a couple of species and strains, but I will probably go a little bit more into them after I move and sort of figure out some long-term husbandry things. 18 viewers. Thank you, guys. This is one of the longest live streams that I've done in a while, so I'm happy about it. But really need to bring everybody up to speed, and I kind of needed a break from work because right after this, I'm going back to packing JoJo's order, which is going out tomorrow, and there's a lot of things that need to go in that box. Was it Protoneura species red, Kia's heat, and protein right? The Protoneura species red did phenomenal for me all winter. I kept them moist, wet, not really wet, more moist, heavy moist, with cloth lid ventilation, and I fed them dog food, and they did phenomenal. Then spring, summer comes, air humidity, blah, blah, Kyle's usual rants. And, Lobella, they've been identified as Lobella, okay. And then they crashed, and they never recovered. And that's not just, I had pulled them because the culture was contaminated with, I think it was tiny blues or something. So I pulled just the reds at some point to separately culture, and both the original culture and the new culture crashed. So I got to figure out what to do next summer, because this summer has been great for springtails for me. You can't see the springtail rack, but I've been able to keep Orchicella Quinta, Orchicella Villosa, and Tomaserosia vulgaris going for about 6-ish months now, multiple generations, and usually it's the summer that kills the colony with blah, blah, blah. Kyle's usual rants, air, humidity, ventilation, blah, blah. But I have them in roach size and style enclosures and have been keeping them isolated from intruding springtail species and have been very attentive to their needs. And so they're all doing phenomenal. And I hope that I can take what I've learned and am using here and apply it to the other springtails that I am seeking to keep. Basically, everything that I collected in Alabama this year crapped out in terms of springtails, and I'm upset about that. But I'll collect more next year or at some point, and I have enough on my hands already, and I have enough commercially viable species at the moment. I don't have to worry about that. Zen Monkey says we had up to at least 20 people recently. Great, excellent. So maybe people were waiting for the long streams. You got a boring Thursday night. You got to come here and have a good time listening to me rant about bugs. You need to get finer fabric messy so you don't keep getting mites. The mites are not the problem. Whatever mites have gotten into the colonies seem to only go after other mites because the Quinta, Villosa, and Cicobria all have predatory mites in them, but their numbers have not decreased. And I had noticed this before because I had blamed predatory mites on springtail colony crashes in the past. But then at some point, I think it was the first time I kept Tomaceras for multiple generations and had them go through a bust and then a boom after that. But I noticed that while the second bust was happening out of the ashes, that the enclosure was full of mites. And I thought, okay, if the mites are causing the crash, then the springtails should not be recovering when there's a bunch of mites in here, of predatory mites. So what I'm thinking is the conditions that allow for these mass emergences of the predatory mites, maybe there's a bunch of orobatids in the substrate, or grain mites start to bloom or something. Whatever conditions allow for the predatory mites to boom in numbers may be detrimental to the springtails initially, but then if you get past that, the springtails do just fine. So I'm very happy with the springtail results that I've gotten, and I'm actually kind of upset because this has been a great year. We had such a dry spring. It's been a great year for Orchicella Quincta in the wild, but I haven't been able to find Hamidiosocea, which last year was literally everywhere. Like there were just hundreds of Hamidiosocea everywhere and basically nothing else. And this year they're gone, nothing anywhere. So, but I do think I'm going to try the Selena Banksai. That's another one. That's definitely on the top of my Florida get list next year is Selena Banksai. And I'm going to try a modified approach to this. I think I'm going to try and keep them kind of dry substrate with one damp corner and humid air. I think I might get a special custom lid made to put on a critter keeper enclosure for the Selena because they are a climber, and I don't think roach no crossing will stop them from climbing. Springtails not on your site that you've made available before. I think Victor might have to go out. I'm going to go let the dogs out, and then I will come back in here. And also, for anybody who's still watching, these guys are still on my hand. Yes, beloved Gumper. Okay, put this big guy back. Oh, I forgot to add. Again, so much stuff going on right now. I had an accidental hatch of horse lubber grasshoppers. This is an F2 generation. So I had this tank full of sand that I kept the Arena Vega from Yuma in, And I got a couple of babies, but those piddled out, and the adult females lived a long time, but then eventually piddled out. And I got a hatch of horse lubbers in the winter last year or something. It was like around, I don't know, maybe December, January. I can't really remember. And I threw them in there, and I took pretty good care of them, and they bred, and I was just like, okay, whatever. I figured the Aranavega might eat the horse lubber grasshopper poop, and I think they might have been doing that. So now it's only been like, I don't know, anywhere between 5 and 7 months later. And I was just like, okay, if there's any Aranavega ooths in the substrate, they will hatch if I give it a heavy watering with the higher humidity and temperature, blah, blah, blah. So I saturated the substrate, and I didn't have a lid on the enclosure. I just had it in here because I figured, oh, those horse lubbers probably didn't breed, or if they bred, the eggs aren't going to hatch for another like 8 months or something. And then what do you know? Look on the wall, and there's a little baby lubber grasshopper crawling. And so then I look at the tank, and there's a couple more. Wasn't a big hatch, maybe only about 10, and maybe only about 7 of them were in good shape. So, but it's an F2. It's an F2 of Tiniopoda eques. And I am going to take good care of these and keep doing that. And, vegetation is not at a shortage at this time of year, so it'll be very easy to keep their appetites satisfied just going out in the front yard and grabbing something. So, and there'll probably be more hatches out of there over time. There's a couple of ooths, or I guess they're not technically ooths, a couple of egg clusters in the substrate. But maybe one day I'll make some horse lubbers. I'll put horse lubbers on the Roach Crossing website, and they'll probably be very expensive. This is not a very practical thing to raise in large numbers consistently. But, if somebody wants horse lubbers, they are a pretty easy pet and pretty low maintenance in a lot of ways. So, then start a list of all the common names of species made available. So I've sold Hamidia socia. I never used a common name for those. Tiny blues for those Produromorphos. Philosomia canidas, large whites. Entoma bria gricio olivata will probably was the olive gray springtail, maybe. Orchicella cincta is the belted springtail. Vulgaris common bull springtail. Orchicella villosa woolly mammoth. And this new one from Montgomery, when I lifted the bark off of Siphoteris similis ant springtail. Actually, I have to get some of those to Rin to see if they're. I did send him some. I think I sent him some to see if they actually are Siphoteris for sure. But this the first thing I thought seeing these springtails from under the bark in Montgomery was I thought they were on like crack because they were just so wigged out. They weren't even jumping. They were just like zipping around and like crazy, just completely wigged out behavior. And that's actually the only species of springtail that continually cultured for me from the trip this spring. So, I might, if they continue to do well, when I commercialize them, I might call them, if we get an identification on them, obviously I will use the Latin name over a common name. But until then, crackhead springtail honestly seems like a really good fit for them. So, yeah, I'm trying to think any other Isotoma delta. I don't think I ever used, or CF Isotoma delta. I didn't really use a common name for those. There might still be a couple of those in the Orchicella cincta culture, but they do well when I first collect them. They reproduce, and I usually get like an F2 out of them, but then they just kind of piddle out after that. So that's a species I need to refine husbandry for. So, and then there was that cave springtail that I still can't remember the name of. Somebody on here sent me the culture of them. Those are doing well too. He said it's a very common cave species of globular. Some egg says, I found a pink katydid female. Some egg send a picture. Do you know what species or genus it is? So she was eating something off of her abdomen. It could have been a spermatophore. So that's the females do that after it fertilizes them. They'll eat it. It's a nuptial gift from the male. So I'm curious what species you found, because a lot of the Amblycarifa species, Amblycarifa, are pretty easy to breed in captivity and rear year round. Speaking of which, my contact I sent my Stilpmachlora kulaniana to, all the adults that I sent her have died. She seems to have some eggs. We're not really sure on the viability, though. It seems to have been a while since they were laid, so they should have hatched by now. So I don't have my hopes too high, but I was by a contact today who owed me a little something for an order that I placed, sent me an adult female Stilpmachlora, a wild-caught one. So she may be fertilized, she may not. I'll just take good care of her and wait until I can hopefully get a male, or she may, if she's not fertilized, she may be alive by the time that I go to Florida next year. So, but the contact might send me males. He tends to send me a couple every couple of orders I place with him. So, Panthera says, interesting story. My Zavobis Morio beetle I had for 2 years was on his back last night having some type of neurological fit. He couldn't walk at all. I put him in a separate cage to let nature something. That's interesting. The Ceratophycella lilacs. I had a. If anybody has any final questions or things you'd like to talk about, post them now. Otherwise, this will be some of my last thoughts because I do need to get back to packing JoJo's order. I'll read through Panthera Nico's. This morning was totally normal, walking all over the place. Yeah, I mean, bugs are weird. I'm surprised it lived for 2 years, but if you're taking good care of them, a lot of bugs can live a very long time, surprisingly. Scuderia septentrionalis. Yeah, everything's late here this year. Like I've just saw a Scuderia nymph in the backyard that wasn't mature yet. Everything is late, and only maybe a couple of days before my birthday did I start hearing like the typical summer assemblage of bugs calling. For a while, like all through July, it was just spring field crickets, and then it got silent for a long time almost. So it's just kind of weird. It's a weird year. So I got a culture of the lilac springtails. I was keeping them on the desk, and I just had them in a little culture cup with the chocolate clay that they were sold in. And I was just feeding them a little bit of fish flakes here and there. They're doing fine. And then I did a big brain move and thought, oh, they do fine on little fish flake. Why not use more? So I put like a big pinch in. And I think I came back a couple days later, and some sort of anaerobic process had started in there, and it had wiped out all the lilacs, and they were all like, when you see, there's those documentaries of like those gas bubbles in like lakes in like the Rift Valleys of Africa, and there'll be a night where like a bunch of volcanic gas will be released from underneath the lake, and like every vertebrate within like a half mile of that just dies, and there'll just be like these pictures of like all these dead cattle and stuff. It's exactly what it looked like. All the springtails were bloated. They were all like on their side of their back with their legs stuck out. It was nuts. So now I need to get some more of those. But Rin is supposed to send me some things, and I told him to hold off because I have so much stuff that I have to do. But he's supposed to send me a couple of those things, so I'm eager to get some of that. Eager to get in on that. So, anybody have any other thoughts, questions, anything else that you would like to bring up before we wrap up this very successful live stream, and one of my longest in a long time? And I think part of the reason for that is I don't have much else scheduled for myself tonight other than getting JoJo's order. There's always a billion things to do here, but I've been pushing myself so hard the last couple of weeks, and things have been rough with Angela's dad passing. So, I just kind of figured I'd come and touch base with everybody and have a nice time. And I'm on top of emails and all what the jazz. So, Exotic Wilderness asked about my Hermetica Stremosa. I think I was keeping them too hot. I think the secret to Luki Hermetica and Hermetica is to keep them at room temperature without supplemental heat, because both of my Subquincta and Varicosa have been doing exceptional for years, and I don't have any heat on them. to the point where I'm pretty sure I'll never kill either of those colonies. And every time I try to put grossi and Hormetica stromosa on heat to bump the production, they just end up like rapidly aging and not breeding very well. So I'm taking a different approach. I pulled my remaining stromosa off of the heat, and we're going to see how they do without any sort of supplemental heat. And I'm hoping that's been the key. Same with my Leukia Hormetica grossi. So they're alive, but they haven't reproduced in probably at least a year. So Panthera says, we have a spring cricket we raised since she was a pinhead. We named her Reaper since she likes to chew on dead insects. Yeah, crickets are pretty vicious in the wild. It's interesting they were the first choice for a domesticated feeder insect, considering how vicious a lot of them are and just how much they eat too and how high quality the food needs to be. Stephen Logan asks, fried chicken or non-fried? I could go for some KFC right now. I actually haven't had meat in a couple of days, not by my choice, but just because I've been busy. Definitely going shopping on Saturday and filling up the pantry, clearing out the pantry, filling up the fridge. I've had a lot of peaches, though. I do love me some peaches. Can't wait to grow lots of peaches in the future. So, anybody else, any questions, comments? Tennyson had commented on, I think Tennyson brought up Bug Tour when. I'm going to do a big, before the Roach Crossing overhaul and sort of in the like mid-November period of time where I'm on top of everything, the bug room is going to get a deep clean in preparation for JoJo to come and take pictures of everything basically. And, also to kind of just get a leg up on any grime and stuff because we are going to be selling the house in the spring. And so, I feel like, and Will's also, I've talked to Will about this. I begged him, I said, can you come and do like a suicide mission clean of the basement with me this winter / late fall? And he said, yeah, I just need to get him the dates ahead of time. And so Will's going to be here for several days helping me out with a bunch of stuff too. So I feel at that point I will be very confident in showing off the bug room downstairs. But I will say, I feel like by this fall, this room is nothing to scoff at, guys. It took me like 6+ hours to do husbandry in here yesterday. And Angela came in here and she was looking around and she was like, wow, there's so much stuff in here. And I'm like, yeah, it's not as much stuff in the basement, but it kind of is, and blah, blah, blah. And then we sat and counted. We sat and counted every enclosure and every tag that was on everything. And we concluded that there's over 130 different species of stuff being cultured in this room alone. So there's a lot of stuff in here, guys. And every day it's just in the backdrop to the light. I mean, let's take a quick look around. You look over here, you see this nice rack that I just added today. This is an addition. No idea what's going to go on it, but probably more Parcablata, Aranavega, new roach species that come in, blah, blah, blah. You've got that rack over there, but then there's also up there where I have smaller cultures of things, kind of trial cultures and fruit flies. Stuff that I'm just sort of like, this is going to be upgraded to a bigger enclosure really soon. And or, I don't think this is going to breed, but I'm going to give it just a little bit of a try. And I am going to be keeping, I had a space down here designated for all of my supplies, those sprayers, etc. I thought, I'll have a designated place. It'll be really great. I do not like bending down to pick up stuff from there. So from now on, I'm going to have all of my supplies, like the waterers and things I need to access semi-regularly on the top shelf here. It just makes me so much more likely to do it and less of a hassle. And then if we tilt this over this way and ignore the microphone, you can see that the containers go all the way up to the ceiling and all the way down to the floor. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. There's a whole stack of 3 containers here too, right there. All 3 of those. And then we go up again and there's all of those. And then we go all the way up and there you go. So there's a lot of stuff here. And then, of course, there's the big rack behind me. But, I looked at I looked at a live stream. I don't know why. I looked at the Eublabrus Biolii distanti rant I went on, whatever that was, 2021. And I look in this room and I think, wow, it's so empty. And then I look now like, yeah, well, it's because you got that there and you got that there and, all this stuff. So for Realsy's bug tour, finally, yes, I have very high standards for things, and I want the bug room to be up to those standards. And, if Jojo Macro's here, then, and Will's here, I have two capable, perhaps, people who could film or do something of that sort. But I'm not sure if it'll be a live tour or if it won't be a live tour. Maybe not. We're going to figure that out. I do know there's a couple things that people still want to see. I did send some pictures to people who had requested seeing some things in a tour live stream. But Olive Euphoria Beetle's name is Peach. Euphoria! Real quick, Alan was kind enough to send me some Euphoria Monticola. I screwed up with my group. They seem to have an entomophagus fungus that came with the substrate I collected them on. Alan sent me some that he got from a different locality, and he got quite a few larvae from them. But best of all, the blue allele seems to be pretty common, at least in the two populations of Euphoria Monticola that Alan and I went to, because I got a blue adult, or 2 or 3 blue adults, before they died, and Alan got mostly blue adults from his locality that he collected. So eventually it might be an uphill battle to isolate the green, the supposed wild type coloration for that stock, should we get it to go another generation. Question: lowest temp you'd think bug room be safe for most things? A lot of stuff does great with a daytime temp raise and a nighttime temp drop. I would say you can let a room fall into the high 50s at the absolute lowest every night, as long as it gets up into like the high 70s, 80s during the day. Some things may not be so happy, but in high 50s, I think, is right before you start to get into the danger zone consistently. But 60s, no problem. That's the tropics at night in a lot of places most of the time. So KFC is selling livers and gizzards, but taking away the Nashville hot. Yeah, I haven't been to a KFC I haven't been to a KFC since Kai and I went to go pick some things up from Tennessee last July. We were in Kentucky, and Kai was like, we have to go to a KFC. We're in Kentucky. So we went to KFC. Kentucky Fried Chicken while we were in Kentucky, and Kai loved every second of it. And add to that, we had a bunch of chickens in the back of the car, so it was even better. Satchel says, no one told me about these Monticola. Satchel, yeah, they're beautiful as adults, but like Sepulchralis seems to be the exception among U.S. Euphoria, because they'll just breed year round, no questions asked. But a lot of these other ones, they either need a diapause or they have one brood per year, and that's really annoying. Metopoloba prunosa. Poloba prunosa. Let's see what this is. Nope. If you're going to talk to somebody about that, talk to TJ, because tenebrionids are his bread and butter in a lot of ways. Panthera says, most of the Euphoria beetles I find are dead. Bumblebee flower and bee-like scarab are the most common where I live. Yeah, I haven't seen an adult Euphoria Inda in like 3 or 4 years, but last year my compost was loaded with them. This year, not so much. Interesting. Tessa wants to see what can be selected for Incurnii and Fulgida. At this point, I'd be happy to just have any other Euphoria that does not have a protracted growth and life cycle. Anything that's like Sepulchralis would be great. And so that's why I might have to be crazy and either beg Alan when he goes back to the Keys for that Euphoria species, or when I go next year, pray that I can find the Keys endemic one, because that one likely doesn't need a diapause. But who knows? Because Pelinota punctata from Key Largo take a whole year to complete their life cycle, even though it's a tropical population. So maybe the Euphoria there takes a whole year too, and it just doesn't do anything for most of the time. Just sits prepupal or something in the cell. I'm hopeful for the reds. They're just like Western species. Question: are there any roaches besides the pest species in the Pacific Northwest or Washington? Lots of termites. technically roaches. There might be some weird endemic species that hasn't been discovered yet. There's Parkablata. It's Americana for now. I'm pretty sure that Parkablata, the western ones, will be split up eventually. So Satchel Watsker, I got tons of eggs. Is that of the ones that used to be called Testacea or whatever, Satchel? I do really want to raise those, but I think I raised some. I raised some of those from the first Arizona trip. I found them under that beaked yucca on the pull-off on Texas Canyon, and I was so hoping that they were Euphoria monticola, because when I was digging through the leaf litter looking for Arena Vega at Texas Canyon, all I kept finding was dead parts of Euphoria monticola. So I thought, oh hey, the Euphoria in this yucca stump they gotta be Euphoria monticola. I found all these parts in the other place, and then they actually matured for me, and they all ended up being whatever that was, Kearney or Testacea or whatever it's called, from out there. So that was disappointing. And then of course this year I did find actual monticola, but and now Alan's got monticola too. So. But yeah, I'm kind of wondering about the Keys Euphoria and Keys Cotinus will be kind of passive targets when I go down there, and hope that the stars align and that any of those can be found. That Cotinus in the Keys is probably hurting. Maybe not on the Keys that have more natural areas, but almost certainly on the Keys that have been industrialized. It's probably extinct. And best case scenario is you probably finding somebody's like fruit tree, like a mango in their yard or something, and checking it out during the day on like Big Pine Key or something, and seeing what comes to all the rotted fruit, if any. There's probably a good approach, and I may try to do that. Got a couple of Florida leucographa, that's it. Euphoria leucographa, that's the one. I do have a couple of contacts in Florida, and always appreciate more. So I'm hopeful that we can get some good results and go some good places this year. But I'm not really even thinking all about that. The first thing I need to focus on is the site update, because that's going to be the biggest thing that's ever happened to Roach Crossing, since even bigger than just moving here. It's going to be huge. How much stuff needs to be overhauled. Things need to be rewritten. Info needs to be updated. The entire interface needs to be reworked. So it's going to be a lot, but winter's a good time to do that. Have you ever had Goliath beetles? Yes, I've raised a couple to adult. I've never bred them, but I do have larvae right now, actually, too. Interesting that Leucographa was considered a Sepulchralis subspecies. So maybe they'll be more similar to Sepulchralis than to the other Euphoria. I really hope so, because just another neat little beetle to propagate would be cool. So. Okay, everybody, my voice is getting tired. I got stuff to pack. This has been a wonderful live stream. I'm so glad I could spend this evening with you guys. Thank you for making 22 concurrent viewers. Hey, leave a like if you could, please. I really appreciate that. I appreciate you just being here, too. And it's been very cozy. And thank you for everybody who's tuning in for the first time. And, yeah. If you want to catch Euphoria limbalis in the Keys, you need to dig for larvae. Definitely going to be digging for larvae then, Alan. So, yeah, I'll see everybody next week. Next week, we have the special live stream. We're going out front. We're looking at the plants because we really need to do that. With all the rain this year, everything is so lush and beautiful. So there's going to be a lot of stuff to see, and this is a great time to see a good diversity of stuff too. So take care, everybody. I'll see you all next week. 24 viewers. My gosh. And until then and beyond, may your cultures ever be bountiful. Goodbye, everybody.